Good afternoon from Ohio. We'll start in 1 minute. So if you could all please push mute on your local end of the phone. Thank you so much. Good to see you, Kelly.
Good to see you too. Thank you.
Good afternoon from Columbus, Ohio. Let's get started. I got 3:31. Welcome to all that have joined us for this fourth and final installment of a series of Purple Star Town Halls. The first three focused on high school and beyond, as well as the second one, including our middle schools and community outreach. And then yesterday was early ed and elementary and preschool learning, along with community engagement, family outreach. So great three town halls here in the Buckeye State of Ohio. We had more than 140 or so folks RSVP register across these 4 days. And again, high bars to meet today from those three first town halls moderated by colleagues here in the Buckeye State of Ohio. Now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague and former Purple Star founder here in the Buckeye State 4 years ago, now retired, Deb Muniz, a member of the State Council of MIC3, Military Interstate Children's Compact, over in the great volunteer state of Tennessee. Deb? You might be on mute, Deb. Isn't that the #1 quote of 2020? Well, why don't I continue on my end, and then we'll wait for her to chime in. I know she was there a moment ago. So we were going to do a couple round of introductions for our panelists. First up is Dan Dunham. Again, Dan Dunham is the commissioner for the Military Interstate Children's Compact over there in the great Commonwealth of Virginia. And Dan grew up as a military family, in a military family, graduated from Arnold High School in Watzbeiden, Germany, a DoDEA school. So definitely overseas, and knew the military life. But more than that, he's the only MIC3 commissioner out of our 50+1 that was previously a school liaison officer, who obviously that work through the Department of Defense, the branch services, is really the field operations of the schools and the families and the bases. So great experience there for Mr. Dunham, as well as himself serving in the U.S. Navy Reserves as a quartermaster. And so he just knows the full gamut of not just the Virginia Department of Education and founding Purple Star there in Virginia, which was the second state after Ohio, but just an experienced leader, and we're great to have him here on board today. Deb Muniz, the individual I mentioned earlier, worked here in the Buckeye State of Ohio for the Ohio Department of Education, as a local educator across Northwest Ohio, retired to Tennessee, but was part of the founding team back in the summer and fall of 2016 when we created with Purple Star with local families, education associations, nonprofits, and on down the list. So a great fan of Deb, as she took on to retirement and supports the MIC3 State Council there in Tennessee. Deb, are you still with us now? Well, I'll continue with our introductions. Also on the panel is Kelly Kravitz, Director of Purple Star Schools at the Texas Education Agency, the Division Director of Highly Mobile and At-Risk Student Programs, and working the Purple Star Schools as we speak. Over there in Texas, they launched Purple Star in, I believe, the month of June, and perhaps within a handful of weeks, they'll announce their inaugural class of Purple Star Schools, but I'll leave that to Kelly. Kelsey Carter, a member of the State Council of the MIC3 in the great state of South Carolina, which was the third state after Ohio, right, and in between after Virginia to found Purple Star. She is the military community liaison at the Richland School District in South Carolina. So welcome, Kelsey, Kelly, Dan, and Deb. And now, Deb, are you on the line? We'll get to our first question then. Can't wait to have Deb in here. So the quick of Purple Star, if I could do a 60-second, was military families were always going base to base, state to state, going back to the World Wars, what have you. So at the end of the day, with K-12, you're going to have different transcripts and tests. So that's what MIC3 came together and solved so many things when it came to graduation and that pathway for those K-12 students. But again, it was about the paperwork and getting that student on track and on time. The whole child, the social emotional, was always going to exist. If they're moving from 6 to 9 times, you can imagine, and we can imagine. And obviously, Kelly deals with that in Texas with the highly mobile, which is more than just military families moving. And that is our way of the world, no matter what state you live in today. So with that, Purple Star came into being in here in Ohio when we had seats brought to the table, and all the branches were Air Force heavy because of a great community of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, but other branches came together, education associations for those professional educators, such as the statewide association here in Ohio of superintendents, principals, teachers, school counselors. So all of us got together and we said, what does military family friendly look like? And that's what we came up with and launched at the National Museum of the Air Force in Dayton, Ohio, home of the Wright brothers. So that's that synopsis of Purple Star. Let's dive into our questions. What was its initial importance from your perspective when you first heard of Purple Star? Let's begin with Dan. Dan?
Well, I think the initially, I saw it as a way to continue the work of outreach that we were doing in Virginia. I was hired in 2016, and one of the first charges that the Compact Council in Virginia gave me was, Dan, we don't think everyone knows about the Compact. And we think schools need to have folks that are a little bit more knowledgeable about the flexibilities. And so what are you going to do to help, get that word out and to, develop the staff members? And so from my perspective, I saw it as a great opportunity and a great mechanism to sort of build knowledge out into the schools at the grassroots level. And I saw it as a great way to just, strengthen the relationships that schools should have had or should have with their school liaison officers. And then the third thing was that I didn't really believe the council in what I was hearing when they said, well, we don't think schools know enough about supporting military families. I mean, I had worked as the regional school liaison officer for Naval District Washington, which sits really close to Virginia, and I knew of great things that were happening in the schools. And so it was perplexing to me to hear that leaders in the state didn't know about those things. And so I saw it as a platform for the schools to be able to communicate back to folks in the government the great things that they were doing. So it seemed like a win-win.
Kelly, your thoughts?
Yeah, for us in Texas, our 86th legislature passed the Purple Star designation. And so being at the Texas Education Agency, we went to develop out the policy to really guide what the Purple Star was. And I really see this as a recognition and incentivizing districts to do excellent practices on behalf of their military connected students. And because of some of the work that we had done with other highly mobile populations, as Pete had mentioned, students in foster care, students who are homeless, who are also mobile, we were actually able to take some of what we had gleaned from that rulemaking process and some of what we learned through those student groups and their transitions and their mobility to quickly execute on the Purple Star in combination with looking at what other states had done and the leadership of Ohio and others to essentially incentivize better practices and then giving districts that recognition. Campuses and districts for those that are doing that work.
Kelsey, you bring that district perspective because that's where you're housed, but you're obviously a member of the military family. I know your spouse just retired. Please bring that perspective from South Carolina. You might be on mute.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Oh, awesome. Yes, I am a proud military spouse of an Air Force. My husband retired recently. And it does bring a different perspective. My role in our district is military community liaison. And so the position resonates with who I am as a military spouse and the connection that you can make with military families because you've lived that life. You've gone through PCSs and extended TDYs, and it sort of puts you in that position to relate to what these families are experiencing. So for me, the Purple Star has been a phenomenal way to connect with families, to build relationships with them. We service Fort Jackson Air Force, Fort Jackson Army Base, and also Shaw Air Force Base. We have a large military population in the Midlands of South Carolina, and not even counting Charleston and Beaufort, the MCCS base in Beaufort. We have a large military population that people don't realize in the state of South Carolina. And so Yolanda Anderson, who I'm actually sitting in for, had the notion to jump on the bandwagon and say, we need this because we want to make sure we have the best supports for our families when they move to South Carolina. We want to make sure that we have a program that recognizes that when you come here, you understand that we are going to be held accountable to make sure you get what you need. And so the Purple Star for me is a personal kind of a reward because as a military spouse, I think most of the people on the calls know how difficult it is to find employment when you're moving all over the place. And so when this position came open, it was a perfect fit for me. So I look at Purple Star as a personal reward, as well as how it's benefiting our district. And kind of piggybacking what Dan said, it allowed us, kind of Yolanda's notion in our education was to allow us a platform, as Dan eloquently said, to educate our schools and our districts about MIC3, about the compact. So thank you.
And Kelsey, you were speaking about reward. And at the end of the day, I think those of us on this phone that are just citizens, taxpayers, veterans in the uniform, in the classroom, we know that some of these schools, wherever they are from sea to shining sea, are already doing some of these initiatives.
Yes.
So you talk about award. Well, hey, you do have to raise the bar because that's what Purple Star is about. But you got some things that is low-hanging fruit, whatever you want to call it, that you can check the box right away and say, you know what, we're already on our way. And so, Deb, I know you're going to ask our next question as being on the line, but share your experience in Tennessee and coming from Ohio. And I know you've had the opportunity to award some banners and Purple Stars yet this week. So, Deb?
I think everything that I've heard people talking about is exactly the reason, Pete, when we started this, that's what we had in mind. And that idea that people within schools may not understand MIC3 we found that to be true. And families that didn't know the compact existed, that equally is concerning, because it's hard to advocate for yourself if you don't know you have something that you can advocate from. So yes, this week has been, the past 10 days have been quite a whirlwind. Dan McLaughlin, the Tennessee Mixed Street Commissioner, and I have been visiting schools and presenting these awards. And I continue to hear the same things all of you have been saying, that this is a way for us to shine a light on what schools are doing that support military families. So, Pete, I guess I have really very few new things to add to that, what everybody else has already said. It's just been, for me, this town meeting is just kind of the icing on the cake after being out in schools and seeing what they're doing and talking to them. So, all right, I have another question for the panel. What do you plan to get out of this initiative? When you look down the road, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, what is it that you hope this develops into? What do you hope for schools and for families? Dan, I'll start back with you. What is it that when you look into the future, what do you see?
Well, what I see, hopefully, is that all schools will be striving to be Purple Star recognized. Can you guys hear me? Because I don't see
Yes.
myself populating.
Yes.
So that in 10 years, I would hope that we would have at least half, if not more, of the schools across the state of Virginia recognized with Purple Star designation, that we would be in at least the third, iteration, because the school has to reapply every 3 years. So I would hope that schools who are Purple Star recognized the first year would be then applying for their third star. That would be great, because that would prove that we have built in sustainability into the program. I think that that's very important. I would hope that I would have a litany of things that have occurred as a result of Purple Star that have blown everybody's mind. They go above and beyond just supporting students during transition. And I know we have a place in your agenda, Pete, to go over, how this might help us to explore how to make our social emotional development of kiddos who experience a lot of transition even richer and more robust. So I'm hoping to, in 10 years' time, that we'd be talking a little bit more about that. How has the program helped with social emotional development, not just with the students who experience transition, but across the school campus and climate? And then tie that back. How has it really truly helped the entire school community and the community outside of the school? I hope that in 10 years' time, we have more conversations on those lines.
Kelsey, what is your vision for the future?
Let me unmute myself real quick here. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Well, kind of on the lines of what Dan said, hopefully we will have more schools on board, or more districts on board with Purple Star. To date, there are, the last meeting that I had with some of our constituents with the Department of Education, there are 4 districts that are currently interested in Purple Star. So we want to expand this. We also want to make sure that we continue to build a better network with our installations, better communications, more solid and effective communications with our networks, our partnerships, more collaboration with our military support networks, our stakeholders like MSEC and the National Military Family Association, Military One Store. So we want to see those relationships strengthened in the next 10 years. And as I said before, in addition to having more districts and more schools recognized as Purple Star, we have pretty good relationships right now with our installations, but quite naturally, we want that to grow. We want that to increase for sure.
And I think that's an important thing, is getting that. And I think that's the question here in the near future, but is that idea of growing, and how do you do that and keep the momentum? Kelly, what about for your district? What are your plans? What are your hopes out of this program?
Yeah, excellent. So in Texas, we have over 1,200 school districts. And I think when you think 10 years down the line, it's like I want every single military student who transfers into and out of Texas to have an excellent experience in their transition, and for not only good practices that right now that are being recognized in transition programs to be something that, there's standout schools, but that we would have an entire state full of standout schools and programs where students can speak to Texas's experience as being excellent. And so I think big picture, that's where we want to be. And having many more schools designated, which is going to grow. We're just beginning. And then as was spoken, the collaboration and the coordination between the installations and the school districts, and this really being able to drive and supporting that coordination. So I'm really excited to see what happens.
I think that idea of the networking is vital. I think that hasn't really been tapped between schools, between military bases and the schools. I think there's a bit further that we can go with that. In our travels this week, I had two things that came to fruition from back when Ohio started this Purple Star journey. Back in the day, what we were hoping for was that military families would be able to come into Ohio and see this is a Purple Star school. And we know that they shop, and then be able to connect with that school. The other thing was that this would go beyond just what happens with military children, because there's a lot of different places or different occupations that require parents to transition in and out of school districts. Well, this week, and it about brought me to tears, I had an assistant principal say, we had a family who came to us to enroll, and one of the things that was one of their criteria, and they were coming from another state, and I didn't get a chance to ask him what state, but they knew they knew about the Purple Star, and they knew to look for a Purple Star school when they came into the state. And that's why they enrolled in that particular school. So I see this as a large network for families where they can connect and move on. The other item, which you think this is going to be 3 or 4 years down the road, but we had a superintendent that told us that they started working through the Purple Star application and completing all the pieces, and they realized that they had corporate families that were moving in and out, and so now they have duplicated the type of services that they have for their military children and carried some of those over for corporate. So sometimes I think we look down and it may be 10 years away, but I would guess that it is probably going to be much closer. Those things that you're dreaming about and wanting to happen, I have a feeling they're going to be much closer. Pete, do you want to continue?
Yes. Dan, I know you obviously implement MIC-3 across the Commonwealth there in Virginia, and obviously we know from being on that job as appointed by our governors that it outlines the specific transitions and transcripts to get our kids placed when they're on PCS. How have you seen, because I know you have student and parent teams that help the overall effort there in Virginia, how do you see them playing a role on that social emotional side of Purple Star, which obviously is beyond MIC3. And how I kind of view it, and I don't know about you, Dan, I know you're native Ohioan and all that, so maybe we got similar thoughts, but MIC3 is that statewide law. You know, you got that speed limit sign on the highways and the local roads, but it's on the books. But perhaps Purple Star is that local implementation of MIC3 and beyond. Dan?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You know, a lot of what goes on with supporting military children and looking at transcripts and assisting them in the transition is really done by the registrars and counselors at the school. And so they're having almost an expert knowledge of the compacts is beneficial to the school community and definitely to the parents and the children. And so the more that becomes, you know, widely known, and the more expertise is out there in the field with understanding the compact, the fewer cases that I would see at the Virginia Department of Education or any commissioner would see. Because it would be managed right at the school level. And so then more time can be spent. You know, every Purple Star school in Virginia has a military point of contact, a staff member who's assigned to help the military families and the students. And so they can spend more time talking about the other challenges and the other struggles that the family experiences that can you know, put more stress on the child or put more stress on the mother or the father or some other member of the family. And they can concentrate on, you know, eliminating those or minimizing those stressors, or at least helping them develop strong coping skills. We know by, you know, research time and time again has pointed to the strength of peer transition support, especially with preteens and teens. It's one thing to say, well, I have, you know, a faculty member or a staff member at school that I can talk to and I can confide in. And we know that that's important. It's very important for students to feel connected in some way to somebody at the school, but it's even better when their peers are empathetic and sympathetic. And when we have a community of students who are learning how to be empathetic, then we have a better community as a whole, and we have a better citizenry. So I think that that Purple Star is a move in the right direction regarding that, and I think that that this is a way for schools to sort of jump on board. And if you're looking for a way to get that developed in your schools, then, you know, look to Purple Star as being a mechanism for that.
I know you're about to have Purple Star schools, Kelly, so we'll skip over you. And there are other questions, as you know, that are definitely right up your alley on that statewide network, that brand new network. But Kelsey, you can bring that perspective on that district level. Tell us about some South Carolina Purple Star kids and what they view that initiative as from that local level in Richland.
Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking when Dan was talking, we received our award August of 2019, and little did we know that we would be in for all of these tremendous changes with COVID. And when you're talking about social emotional mechanisms, Purple Star has allowed us to be able to compartmentalize that, where we are working with counselors in each one of our 40 schools in our district. In addition to our counselors being the POCs and helping support students in their social emotional learning, we also have MFLACs, the Military Family Life Consultants, who work alongside with our counselors to provide support for our families and our students in need. And I wanted to go back to what Deb said about, and I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. I get excited about Purple Star stuff, but she had mentioned, you know, some things that where we see ourselves 10 years from now. And I one of the things that I would love to see as the military community liaison, kind of the boots on the ground person, going to the schools, working from the district level, I'd like to see a network of military liaisons across the country, where we have our own conferences and we have our own network, and we're, you know, sharing best practices, because it really can be quite challenging, to be honest with you. Kind of right there on the ground, I have I get constant phone calls from parents who are moving in, moving away. But that social emotional piece, to go back to that, we are creating layers to our schools, who are already doing a phenomenal job. But the counselors kind of serve as the point of contacts within the schools. We're providing training for those counselors to make sure that they are on top of some of the needs that military families have now, particularly during COVID. When the stop movement order came into place, that was new to a lot of our teachers and our frontline staffs. So we immediately created a task force, if you will, from the district level through my office, where we explain to folks in the registrar's office and what's going to happen here. This is how this is going to affect military families. They're going to be, placed on hold. Some will be in temporary housing. It's just going to be, a tremendous challenge. So what are we going to do as a district? That mandate came from our Department of Education. We're a Purple Star. You've got to put something in place and make sure that we support these families. And that's exactly what we did. And so being able to connect with those counselors in the schools to understand, the supports needed to help families, during this particular time. So,
thank you, Kelsey. Before I let Deb take on the next question and bring in that great Tennessee perspective, Deb, let me ask Kelly. Kelly, there are some states on this call right now, some K-12 mill leaders from Illinois, Kentucky, Nevada, Oklahoma, and New Hampshire that are starting Purple Star. They're bringing their coalition together. What kind of counsel can you give these folks that are just brand new and you're 4 months ahead of them?
Oh, what a great question. I would just encourage you to learn from other states that are doing this work. Leverage what you have internally at your agency. You don't have to have a lot to get this started. You just have to have the will to do it. And so figuring out existing systems and processes that you can link, utilize, and leverage, learning from other states that have done this work. And then, and something that we need to do more of in Texas is coordinating with our military partners around this in the launch and rollout, and then just sticking with it. I would say that for us, we're and then have that growth mindset. Like, we're going to learn, we're going to grow. It's not going to be perfect, but we're going to get this thing off the ground, which we are. We're going to be making our announcements in the next few days, and we'll be, building on this for the next year. Thanks, Pete.
All right. So I have the next question, and I think parts of what we've talked about we've already kind of led into this, but I'd like to, for some of those listening who are looking at this, going to take that step, what does your Purple Star state network look like? Who do you have involved? What parts are happening? Where are you in the process? I think just kind of letting everyone know what your network looks like, and maybe some of the key people that are involved. Dan, can you kind of help us fill in what your network, how it operates, what it looks like?
I would be happy to do that. So really, our Purple Star Network really begins with the Military Student Support Process Action Team, otherwise known as MISPAT. The military, we love our acronyms. So this is for lack of a better description, it's my brain trust. It's my advisory panel. These are folks from across the military community landscape. It includes a school liaison officer from every branch of service, military spouses from, we try to get one from every branch of service. We're still looking for a Marine Corps spouse, but we have an Army, Air Force, Navy spouse on the panel. We have school counselors and folks from highly impacted school divisions. And we have VDOE staff and myself on the group. The importance of this panel is this is the body that really reviews the Purple Star applications, but they also are engaged in the work of supporting military families beyond what we do with Ms. Pat reviewing Purple Star applications and other issues or concerns that are brought to our attentions by constituents. You know, one of the members, Miss Michelle Norman, she's got a national platform where she's trying to work for military families who have students with special needs. And so she brings a very strong perspective on the unique challenges that those families experience during transition. And they're numerous and they're complex. And so, you know, having insights and having perspectives from folks who experience the challenges with transition, but also bring their network and their links to what they're doing in the community is invaluable. I can't say enough, and I'm sure that every commissioner on the compact would agree, the importance of school liaison officers in the work. School liaison officers are instrumental in helping schools develop the understanding and of what the families need, and also what is available to the families to support them when there are challenges. And so if a school has a strong relationship with their school liaison officer, they're able to do very strong professional development, and they're able to, you know, access someone in the command quickly to respond to issues that may come up. And then that really, the word gets out. Military families are very close network. And when they hear of schools taking action quickly and swiftly, they spread the word. And when they don't, they spread the word. And so that's important. And Virginia, we're very fortunate to have a Interstate Compact Council that that is from every vantage point in the governmental process. So by Virginia code, you have to have two members of the General Assembly. You have to have a state senator. You have to have a state representative from the House. You have to have the superintendent of public instruction. And then you have to have appointees from the governor and a military rep. All councils in every state need to have that. And those folks are an extension then of ways we hear about challenges and hear about concerns, because they all have networks and they all have constituents. And so we're able to, you know, act even more swiftly, because if there is something that requires legislation, or if there's something that needs a heavy lift, we've got some heavy lifters who, and they have networks who can get things done swiftly. And so that's pretty much, you know, the Purple Star, I think, school network, other than hearing from the schools themselves. We're starting to now enter in, Pete's way ahead of us, but we're now starting to enter into having enough schools to look at ways we can make use of these folks who have peer transition support teams, and see if there's additional work that we can get those folks to do to help develop the students and their compassion for one another. And so looking forward to continuing some of that in the years ahead.
And I love that idea, your wording about you have these committees or teams, and each one exponentially helps the cause because they're part of a team, but then they also are able to connect with their team. Then that goes out into the field, or you're using, you know, your council in order to use some of their strengths and their committees. So you take a smaller team, and all of a sudden you have exponential power within your fingertips. It's an easy access for information going both directions. And I think that's important as part of the Purple Star, is this information is going both directions. It makes things happen for families much swifter.
I would agree.
Kelsey, yes, I'm very excited for you. Kelsey, how about within your district?
Wow, I love what he just said. What was that acronym again? Miss what?
It's MISPAT, Military Student Support Process Section Team. I wish I could say that I invented that, but it
Wow.
actually came from Fairfax County Public Schools. They had that practice and play, and I said, you know what? Why not steal it? Just like I stole Purple Star from Ohio.
we did the same thing, but I love that idea. And of course, I love the acronym. I'm coming up with acronyms myself because we're definitely gonna put that in place. One of the things that you touched upon that I think is really key for folks who are listening, who are seeking to become a Purple Star school or district, your SLO should be, my SLO is on my speed dial. Our SLOs that we talk on a regular basis. I think establishing that relationship and connection early on is key. Because as Dan was saying, they can connect you to those installations and the commands when things happen with families, you have that connection. And so I talk to our SLO honestly daily, the SLO at Shaw Air Force Base and also at Fort Jackson. So that's really key, when it comes to creating those networks. And in addition to that, we do have a team. We don't have a neat acronym for that team yet, but some of the folks that are represented are, I think, Dan, you mentioned this, we have a person from EFMP, because oftentimes you have, specific concerns or issues with families who are transitioning and who have children with special needs. Being transparent, I'm one of those parents. I have a child who's on the spectrum, and moving is very difficult for him. Transition is very difficult for him. And so having someone with that knowledge to support our families in that area is very important. We've reached out recently to a lot of our businesses in our in Richland County here in Columbia, especially as a result of COVID. We had to sort of think outside of the box to help families when we were in our e-learning and virtual phase. We had some difficulty helping in childcare and finding those areas to help during the day when the kids were home doing their e-learning. So we had to partner with a lot of like our YMCA's, our girls and boys clubs, faith-based organizations, and so that was a great way to be able to connect all of the folks in the community to be able to support our families during this time. And we've created those relationships, and we're going to continue those, moving forward. We have a great relationship with our Columbia Chamber. And so we work with our Chamber of Commerce to, when families come in, I create welcome packets for them. And so we have sort of a network of folks that come together. I just have to think of a really nice acronym for that group moving forward. Thanks.
I think a lot of us are going to be doing that same thing now that we've heard Dan's great acronym. Now it's almost going to be like a contest. We'll be watching each other's face to see what acronym did you come up with. So
exactly.
It'll be our challenge. Kelly, how about from your perspective?
All right, sorry, I just realized I was on mute. Can you restate the question?
We were just kind of talking about what your Purple Star network kind of looks like, who you have involved in it.
It's interesting because as I've been talking, we have really done the Purple Star within our agency, and we have not partnered with folks across the military community. And so we really handled it in-house. We developed the parameters. We have assessed the applications, and we've done that all within our organization. And then we're going to be making the announcements. And so I think an opportunity for improvement for us is making those connections and really ensuring that everybody from the military community that needs to be included is, and that we build out who is a part of reviewing the applications. And so it's not just something that's handled within our agency alone, but that it's done in a collaborative manner. So anyway, just as I've been working on this project for the last number of months, it's been great to learn from other folks and just to see how we can strengthen what we do as we move forward.
And I think we all are kind of doing that. And that's what's nice, even if you're on this phone call as a state that has been doing Purple Star for a year or 2 years, even Ohio, where this started, is that when we hear other people talk about even acronyms, but when we hear people talk about an item, or, you know, we can replicate that as it fits within our state. So I think it's all right now is all about growing, all about looking at, you know, what's working elsewhere within our agency, within our state, but also across. So having these kinds of conversations, I think, is invaluable for everybody. Pete, do you want to take over?
What? Yes, and what we couldn't do in Ohio until we had our inaugural class, our first class, Kelly, was to have an Ohio Association of Purple Star Schools. And I tell you what, that part of our network, that field operations, adds to what the school liaison officer was doing all by herself over the years. Because Wright Patterson school liaison really was Ohio's school liaison for our whole state. So we only had one here in the Buckeye State. So once you get those folks, you know, that's going to be a huge extension to your network and operations, not just TEA. So that's going to be an amazing time once you announce your inaugural class. And getting to that, I know about acronyms because I went from active duty Navy straight into the Department of Education. So I think that education world and military world is always bad in line who can have the longer acronym or the cooler acronym. But I tell you, it makes things more, you know, succinct, if you will. So speaking of acronyms, MSEC, the Military Child Education Coalition, became our first real national advocate for Purple Star. So they're doing a heck of a lot out there nationally, right out of Texas, speaking of Kelly. So they are probably a natural partner right off the bat for TEA. So with that, I want to talk about kids. So Dan, tell me about all the military kids when you've seen and been allowed to go to events pre-COVID. What do military kids kind of say about Purple Star over there in the Commonwealth?
Yeah, they're really turned on, especially the little ones. They get right behind it. You know, and I have to say that what has really helped with getting the kids more involved in Virginia is that whole peer transition support. We require a school to have evidence of peer transition support at every level, elementary all the way up through high school. Otherwise, you just can't. You can't get Purple Star designation unless you have that in place. The Navy had a program called Anchors Away, and they get the, you know, that's the elementary version, and they paid for that and they supported that. And prior to us having Purple Star, MSEC had programs called S2S and JS2S, and that promoted the same sort of principles that are at play. But even before MSEC, schools already had things like peer transition support at their school, but maybe it just wasn't as robust as it needed to be. So what Purple Star does is it kind of creates, or in Virginia, we create a criteria of what does a really good peer transition support have. So I get pictures of these teams and them wearing their purple and the activities that they're engaged in, and it goes beyond just supporting that child when the child first comes to school and to connect them with their classmates and they meet with them. They do floats at homecoming, their clubs, they go out into community and help with veterans programs. And during COVID, they were, when the schools were not meeting face to face, they were still meeting virtually and talking about how can they work virtually to support their communities and the kids that are transitioning out. Prior to COVID in April, we were going to pilot a program in York County Public Schools, along with the Department of Behavioral Health there in York County and the Virginia National Guard Youth Council. We were going to get the peer transition support teams in York County at all the Purple Star schools to meet with the National Guard and Reserve Council and talk about teen mental health specific to teens that who have parents in the military. The governor was quite concerned with the rate of military suicides that are all over the country, and in Virginia he has a work group to work on that issue, and so they came to me as a work group and said, Dan, what can we do to leverage folks in the schools to get them more involved in the work of supporting the teens who have parents who may have challenges, stressors, and things like that. And so, of course, COVID put a halt to some of that, but we hope to re-engage those teams here in April. So that's just an example. That's an example of how passionate our teens are and our preteens are, and even our elementary students in terms of supporting their peers and supporting one another. We've got some great kids out there, and I think the future of America looks bright because of what I see, how I see their involvement in things like this.
And those passions easily spill over to the adults in the room, right? Tracy Richardson is a major in the Army Reserves, the United States Army Reserve, West Point alum, helps with admissions. She's a member of our state council, our MIC3 state council in here, as well as a member of the Ohio House of Representatives. I see her in the chat box noting our perspectives. So those of you on the call that have some questions for our panelists, go ahead and throw those questions in the chat box. I know some of you are from other states and from Lake Erie to the Ohio River. Go ahead and throw those questions. We'll let you unmute here in a moment after another question. And we'll get into more general Q&A there with our remaining time. So Deb, over to you. Or real quick, before we go to Deb, Kelsey, you being in the district level, hearing from Purple Star military kids, you probably get to hear more than us in our state capitals. What do you have from those perspectives of the kiddos? Kelsey?
Yeah, Pete, I hear a lot of positive feedback from our students, including my own 2 students. Well, and let me just take a moment to brag about our students really quickly. One of our 5 high schools, Ridgeview High School, our students have just been recognized to receive the Francis Hesselbein Leadership Award. I think there are maybe a couple of dozen schools or high schools recognized through MSEC, the Military Coalition, Child Education Coalition. So our students have been recognized, and so I'm very proud, and I had to throw that out there to share. And one of the things that I think that Dan was saying, that we do have S2S programs within our district. We're also going to be implementing the youth sponsorship program, which is similar to S2S. It's a peer-to-peer educational training program for our students that's housed under the Army. So we're going to be rolling that out and make sure all of our schools are up to date in their trainings and their workshops. But the students love it. When Purple Up was phenomenal this year, we didn't know how we would be able to pull that off virtually, but it was amazing. Our students stepped to the plate. They're saying great things about what we're doing in our schools and in our district. We're planning our very first virtual Veterans Day program, and our students are basically doing this. We have our ROTC programs that are stepping in, and they're doing the presentation of colors, and they have speaking pieces. And so our students are the ones that are making or putting Purple Star out there in the forefront, and they are our platform, our mouthpieces, and with the peer-to-peer, bringing in when students are coming in from other places, having that connection and that network, especially if it's a military connected student working with another, bringing in another student that shares similar experiences, it just makes that transition a lot smoother. So we're hoping that that's going to grow in the future in the next 10 years or so. But pretty much everything that Dan said, we've got some great programs going on in our schools, and our kids are loving it. And I'm pushing to see more of that. I'm advocating to see more of that, and moving forward with Purple Up, and Month of the Military Child is always huge for us. And of course, this month coming up is Month of the Military Family. So we have a series of workshops that we're offering every week, sponsored through, again, MSEC, which is the guru. I love MSEC, P-TOP, to tell me a story. We're doing story times for our families, and for all families, military connected families, but all families are able to be a part of that as well. So thank you.
And I think that piece of the students and their enthusiasm, I think that's the part that I miss most during our visits, because we had schools that COVID has had a large impact. And so what we were able to do was go in and do our celebration with staff, but we didn't get to participate with kids. So I'm so jealous, because that's where I think you get all that energy from. And when you start looking at adults and needing to be revitalized on a particular project, all you have to do is bring in kids, and they seem to be able to do that for us. All right, I have one last question from I think our list, and it really is about the perspective of school liaisons, stakeholders, what they're kind of telling you about Purple Star, the impact it's made, or the components that maybe they feel like aren't strong enough or aren't in place. Have you thought about this? I think this is a time for us to kind of share some of the pieces that we've gleaned from some of these other stakeholders that might impact the way that we do Purple Star. Dan, have you had any conversations that, kind of lead us into this idea of how they feel about Purple Star now, and maybe changes or strengths?
Yeah, every year it seems like, oh, we've got this thing down. There's always room for improvement. So before I begin, when we talk about stakeholders, I think we're really all missing a very important group, and that's DODEA. We have a lot of military families that transition from abroad or going abroad. And DODEA is one of those partners in Virginia I know I have conversations with regularly. And so some of the unique challenges that we have are, coming from overseas. And so without them, we wouldn't be able to get past some of those things. And so I know we focus a lot on stateside supports and stateside networks, but we can't forget the federal side of the fence and those folks at one of the 8th largest school system in the country, DODEA. So Kathy Fassan's office and those folks are really helpful. The thing that we have in Virginia that comes to mind is that early on we saw that the need to communicate with families before they arrived. And so, like the rest of the world, most folks go to the internet to look for information. And so a school's website really needs to be very informative and very easy to navigate, and address essential questions that military families have every single time they transition. And so as part of the Virginia criteria, they have to have at least 6 of those components. Well, during the first review cycle, the Miss Pat said, it's nice that we are looking at the websites, and the ones that we're looking at are really doing a good job of meeting those marks. But when it comes to special needs navigation, there's not enough information there. And so we need to put additional specifics on what it is in the navigation that needs to be addressed. And so the very next year during the in the application, we spelled it out a little bit better. This year, it was brought to our attention that Virginia has done some things specific to Virginia that military families would probably really like to know about, and that is remote enrollment. It really helps those families with special needs students, because a lot of the times a family would call the school and say to the school, hey, I have a child who has autism, and we want to start talking about the services that you have in place there. Do you have ABA therapy? What kind of things do you do for students on the spectrum? Well, the school was a little apprehensive of having conversations specific about the services because the student had not yet enrolled. And so, those conversations, there's all kinds of legalities around that. But now in Virginia, with remote enrollment, and it's in the code, it says that students can register for classes at the same time and in the same manner and apply for programs in charter schools as students who already reside in the state, so long as the family can show that they have a copy of their orders, and if those orders are secret, at least a letter from the command saying that yes, in fact, they're going to be residing in or actually assigned to a military installation in Virginia, and begin to have conversations. Well, not enough military families know about that. And Miss Pat realized that the websites weren't really talking about that enough. And that's understandable because it was just passed in 2019. And so it takes a year or so even for the schools to understand completely what that movement by the General Assembly meant. But there's an example of how the Purple Star is evolving, and how information evolves, and how engaging with families might evolve as a result of actions that are taken to benefit military families across the state.
And I love that idea of them being able to remotely enroll, because that gives everybody a little bit of a head start to try to look at things and getting things in place. And then I think anytime we ramp up the website, because back when we were looking at Purple Star in its infancy, one of the things that parents at one of the focus groups told us and emphasized over and over was, we shop, we go out, we know the area we're going to be locating. We go out and we search through school districts' websites to find the one that fits us. And so I think, and then it came right back around full circle when I had that assistant principal said, because they knew about Purple Star when they came here and they saw we had the designation. So I think what you're doing, I have a note here to go out and look at some websites in Virginia so I can see how that's built out. So that's awesome. So I'm going to be doing some stealing from Virginia, just so you know, ahead of time. Kelsey, how about from the district level?
Hey, before I start, I definitely want to send some shouts out to Virginia. They are phenomenal. They do great work there. And speaking of DODEA, we have several schools in our district that receive DODEA grants or DODEA awards, and we partner with sort of the Mid-Atlantic DODEA groups in schools. And Virginia is hosting the DODEA conference this year, and so they're phenomenal. We're learning so much from you guys, Dan, all the great things that you're doing with your military connected students. So we appreciate, you guys kind of being the pioneers there. But anyway, to the question, one of the things that came up for us was communication. I mean, there are certain criteria, obviously, to be a Purple Star district or schools. And one of those is, as Dan was saying, being able to have good communication and a very comprehensive and a family-friendly or military family-friendly website. So we have a great communications team. We had a website in place, but being a Purple Star sort of gives us the notion to make sure we go in and make sure this website is clean and families get the information that they need, is concise, and they're not searching all over the place looking for basic information. So we've revamped that And that was actually a recommendation that came from the installation. Like, let's make sure that when families go in, they have the information that they need and they can register their child if they're overseas or wherever they might be prior to even moving to the state of South Carolina, that their students can register for our schools before they arrive. The other piece that came out of communication is that we have 41 schools, and many of our schools are magnet choice programs. So helping families understand what those magnet schools are about and explaining to them, what their options are, was one of the things that came up. And so we now attend the CIEs, the communities, I think, in education briefings on the installations, in Fort Jackson to be more specific. And in those forums, we're able to come in and talk about our registration process, to talk about our choice and magnet programs, and give the installations and the command the information that they need regarding our schools. And again, Purple Stars is a great platform to allow us to be able to have those types of communications and get the feedback that we need so that we can improve. It is a process, which means we are evolving, we're growing, we're learning, and we're just excited about where Purple Star is taking us and taking our district.
And I do believe when schools have that option, with community, in Ohio's it was community schools, charter schools, magnet schools, that is very confusing for parents because they don't know what that's going to mean for their child. As they get closer to graduation, they don't know what that means as far as quality of education. So I think addressing that is probably a great idea for parents so that they make a choice that they then, rather than enrolling and then deciding, this really isn't fitting, what the way we had hoped. So great idea. Kelly, how about you? Have you heard from any of the school liaisons or any of the other stakeholders that providing feedback about how it's working or what needs to be improved?
I haven't had that direct feedback or communication, but I do think what I already shared is a huge area for improvement, and that's just the coordination with our military points of contact and ensuring that we're doing the coordination that we need to do. I know that we do talk to our school liaison officers and communicate with them, but I think there's so much more that needs to be done as far as branching out and building our networks in Texas around the Purple Star. Yeah,
and I think any one of us involved in that see that or have that very same feeling of here was our soft boundary before, but now we see that, that has exploded out 10 times where it was before. All right, Pete, I think that takes care of that question.
Absolutely.
Great answers.
But I know there are people that have been hearing the panelists engage that have questions on their mind. So go ahead and feel free to unmute. And as you're about to hit the unmute button, let me note the resource posted there by our colleague Kevin with the U.S. Department of Defense. And Kevin is with the Defense State Liaison's Office. And they're good folks that are regionalized and across the country and across the globe. In fact, those good folks at the U.S. Department of Defense have made Purple Star one of their top 10 for quality of living priorities and key measures for 2021. So again, the Department of Defense is also saying not just MSEC on that national level, but Purple Star, DOD, MSEC. So I know Kevin is there, so thanks for that resource. And the link is about advanced enrollment or remote enrollment, which was part of what Dan was talking about. Because obviously, once you've got those PCS orders in hand, you want to start looking around to where you're about to land or where you're going. I see Dan noted another resource there for Fairfax County Public Schools in Northern Virginia. Anyone got questions out there who's been listening for the past hour with us? Please offer them up. Anyone in Ohio or outside Ohio? I know we got some states on the line that are across the country. Questions in that regard? Well, as you can see, Purple Star is evolving, and I think we've heard that 2-3 times from each one of us over this past hour. But I would say the state of Purple Star, 3 years in the making, is in pretty good shape. And I think it has to do with folks that wear the uniform or are at the front of the classroom, or people like Kathy Fasson, who is the Chief of Partnerships at the U.S. Department of Defense Education Activity, as noted by Dan over there in Virginia. So it's these individuals, I think, across the state, across the regions, that are making the difference with or without the title Purple Star. They're doing it. They believe they are a K-12 mill leader in one way or another. Some of us are retired. Some of us are looking forward to retirement. Some of us, it's part of our day job, you know, but we have that story of, I used to wear the Navy uniform in Washington State, or Purple Star School Liaisons, and we have more than 320 in the state of Ohio over those 7 rounds or 7 classes of Purple Star schools in our 3+ years that had a story from their granddad that was on Normandy, or their mom was a Marine, and on down the list. So they might not have been in uniform, but they were touched by someone in experience. And so I'll give you an example. There is a West Point alum over at Liberty Benton. He was so proud. Liberty Benton is in Northwest Ohio, rural Ohio, Findlay, Ohio. He is the varsity wrestling coach there, and he's a West Point alum. And he said, you know, I want to apply for this for my high school so I can be that Purple Star School Liaison and continue wearing, even though he hung up the uniform long ago, but continue that oath of office and supporting military kids. And from my vantage point, a rising tide lifts all boats. So even non-military families are certainly being supported. The civics of it, the honor flight, the nonprofit, the USO is hugely engaged here in Ohio. The United Services Organization, the old Bob Hope and Wayne Newton organization, they're helping more than just airports. They are in the schools and helping military families and veterans. Any questions in the chat boxes I'm reviewing down here? I think these are more resources. Here we go. Also from Kevin Brook with the U.S. Department of Defense State Liaison's Office, a map on Purple Star, on tracking, and the new issue, as I noted, in 2021. So we have some national advocates, local advocates. Questions? Any other questions? Let's go into some wrap-up comment, as we might have some final questions. Let's go straight over to Kelsey. Kelsey, from that district spouse level, before we wrap up today's town hall.
Yes, I hope you guys see my lovely banner behind me representing the state of South Carolina. And I just think when parents and families see that banner, that it's so much more than just a piece of cloth. And what we want is that, I think Kelly said this, that we want in the next 10 years or 5 years from now, in the future, we want folks to be able to say, wow, you know, when we were stationed at Fort Jackson or Shaw Air Force Base, or, you know, McEntire Joint Base, when we were in South Carolina, oh my goodness, we had the best experience. And you know why? Because we were in a Purple Star district. You know why? Because they understood who we were as a military family. They had empathy. For me in this role, it's really about developing a relationship with families. I got a call from a family that just PCS from here to Fort Bliss, and they sent me a picture of the family. They landed there. They're good to go. They're fine. You know, everything's going well. And they called me to say they appreciate the support that I gave them, that the school provided for them during that transition. And that's what we want. You know, we want folks to be able to say that they had a wonderful experience in their transitions, and that we were accountable, that, you know, we're not just talking the talk, we're walking the walk, and we're doing the right things for our military families and our students in South Carolina. So I can send a lot of shouts out to so many people that we work with, Military One Source. I saw Mr. Bruch is on the call. He's done a lot of great work here in South Carolina, supporting us. Of course, Yolanda Anderson, love MSEC, PTOP, parent to parent. Just so many. Our slow Fred, I love you, Fred. You know, it's just so many people that make this happen, that make our Purple Star a success and continue to grow in the way that it needs to grow. Our superintendent is phenomenal. He has a great vision. Both our state superintendent, Molly Spearman, and our school superintendent, Dr. Barron Davis. So we are we're very blessed here, and I'm excited about where this position is going, and all of the partnerships that we're creating. And thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Deb, for just the having that passion and that mission, that notion to say we need this and making it happen. And so I hope we have more schools and more districts in the coming years. And I'm here to help and support any way that I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelsey. Before I come over to Kelly in Texas, right before I went on my Iraq tour at the beginning of 2006, we trained over at Joint Base San Antonio. So we hope those great local schools in Texas are part of the effort in the inaugural class there. I see New Hampshire noted in the chat box that they just signed a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Education Commissioner. So that's great. Rick is with the Counter Drug Task Force there with the New Hampshire National Guard. So Purple Star, again, doesn't have to happen or generated strictly from the State Council of MIC3. In fact, that's the question that I want to send over to Kelly that's in the chat box from William Merkel. Who should be the first person to contact if someone wants to create Purple Star in their state? Because I know you have a legislative route that you could speak to, Kelly, that's different than all the other states. Go ahead, Kelly.
So who should you contact if you want to get started with the Purple Star and let's say you don't have a legislative mandate?
Say you're a Lone Star person in your state trying to start Purple Star. What do you think from your perspective?
I would reach out.
Don't try to put my cell phone in the chat box, Kelly. That's not right. In Texas.
Well, okay, at the local campus level, I would take it up to your local leadership. Like, don't wait for your state to act. You can act where you are within your local community and get this going. Pull these examples and the work that's happening in other places and begin to advocate within your community. I do think, though, reaching out to your State Department of Education, probably every commissioner in this state has an inbox. And I would reach out to them and let them know about this opportunity to get engaged and what is our state doing considering the Purple Star and how we support military connected students. And then talking to your advocates as well. MSEC, I know, located in Texas, is a tremendous support to us at TEA and helpful in anything that we do. And so reaching out to folks that are your advocates and leaders in this space and asking them to help you as well.
Perfect answer. Write that down. Oh, wait, we're recording this. We're going to send that out to the other 38 states. Well, I should say 37 with New Hampshire, set the jet and be the baker's dozen of it. Dan, what's your thoughts, closing thoughts here as we wrap up?
Well, first of all, Pete, I really think that you deserve just a huge round of applause because this would never have happened if you and Debbie didn't get together and consider what those military spouses were saying at Wright-Patterson and looking at it as a diamond in the rough, really a great idea that needed to be broadcasted. So kudos to you guys, and thank you for holding this town hall. And for anyone that's out there that needs support or has questions or want to get in the weeds a little bit about how it works at the school level, give me a call, give Pete a call. He was kidding about his cell phone. He will answer and respond to any question that you might have about Purple Star. He was instrumental in us getting it going in Virginia, and I continue that work. I'm part of the team now, along with South Carolina and any other state that might have already done it. Every state in our union is unique, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And so there's bound to be a state or two or three that might have done it just the way you'd like to do it, or you might want to take one idea from Virginia and another idea from another state. Any way you want to do it, doesn't matter. The families need it. The families love it. The kids love it. The kids need it. And it's a great thing. So just know that you have a group of folks out here rooting for you and are here we got your back. So just give us a call if you need some help.
Amen. When I was on the phone with the state superintendent of public instruction in Montana, and it was a live session with the state council for MIC3 in Big Sky Country, and they voted after our joint presentation there with the MIC3 commissioner, former and retired General Hal Stearns, I said, this is your time to Montana-ize Purple Star and make it your own, just like these other states have done. You see some differences and variances, as it should be. And I know New Hampshire is going to be different and on its own, but it's going to have those tenets of those questions of how can we best support military families during the day, arriving, evenings, weekends. You know, that's the whole child at work. So we as parents and as citizens and taxpayers and advocates want to get in on the support, right? Be on the bench as well as out there on the diamond and support those teams and kids all along the way. So I want definitely Deb to bring that perspective home from Tennessee, because she is one of the only people, kind of like Dan, getting the school liaison officer position and the MIC3 position, and the only one in the country that can say, hey, this is where I was in that field operations in the trenches with the military families, the local educators, speak to the founding of 2 states, Ohio and Tennessee. Deb, your closing thoughts.
I think I truly believe, and I have a great passion for this particular program, because anytime we have families who are serving our country and have to make sacrifices, anything that we can do to help them, I think it's our obligation to pay back. So I think I was like Dan when Pete, when you and Buddy first started talking about this whole thing, I started reading about MIC3, I was like, you know, it really to me seems like our schools are, and I'm a huge school advocate, our schools are probably already doing this. But then when I sat down with those 2 focus groups and listened to what they had to say and realized that it isn't that the schools don't want to do these things, they really do. And they do it for similar things for other populations. But most of them didn't know about MIC3. And then with a different focus group that had a lot of family members, and hearing them tell their stories of moving and, you know, what happens, and, you know, I get lost and I don't have this, or, you know, it takes a while for things to get there, but I need my child in school. They're trying to do the right thing, but they don't know, you know, that they have that support of MIC3. So I think this Purple Star allows us to move that information out in both directions and help schools and parents work together on a common ground. And to me, that is invaluable, because then we are truly serving families. And I think every school wants to do that. So I think the biggest thing we do is we allow families and schools to talk the same language. So, and it's been, Pete, it's been quite the honor, and thank you for the ride, because it has been a very passionate ride for us.
Absolutely. And let me close with a quote from a Pennsylvanian. Those of us who love history, and often it's those who are in education and wear the uniform, engaged, involved citizens, or you wouldn't be on this call, from David McCullough. He's wrote many books, from John Adams to 1776 and on to Harry Truman and current events. But he wrote in one of his books, among the darkest times in living memory was the early part of 1942, when Hitler's armies were nearly to Moscow, when German submarines were sinking our oil tankers off the coasts of Florida and New Jersey within sight of the beaches, and there was not a thing we could do about it. When half our Navy had been destroyed in Pearl Harbor, with scarcely any Air Force, Army recruits were drilling with wooden rifles. So I just share that with you to say, we know the history and what came of that time. And we know it's tough times, COVID-19, you know, our grocery stores, our kids. There's so much on our mind of what we have to do and what's to come. And obviously there's a big election next week and on down the list. Just know that we've been through so much in the course of history, and that we're only here for the blink of an eye. So let's do all we can, just like Davey and did an oath of office, enlistment, etc. We did that, and you educators and you volunteers and you great citizens, and that word is amazing, citizen. Let's continue doing that as we wrap up this fourth and final installment of Purple Star Town Halls. Thank you so much. Be safe. Have a great evening. And again, this recording will be captured and we'll share it with everyone. Thank you so much.